Good morning. Well, it's good to see you all here, and on this warm day. So, last week we were talking about a writing of Dogen Senji's, the Genjo Koan, which, just to recap a moment, Dogen wrote when he was a young man, about 33 years of age, relatively young. And he was writing this to a lay practitioner. And he was giving advice about practice. So it's relevant to us, I think. And Dogen worked with this writing, even though it's relatively short. He worked with it many times and edited it throughout his lifetime up until almost the time of his death. And what we have, as I understand it, is that final edited version of the Genjo Koan that has been translated in various ways. So, working through this, last week we talked about this passage discussing what is the Buddha way, and ended with a disclaimer that despite the Buddha way, blossoms will fall and weeds will spread at times. So this week, I'd like to go on to the next little section, which reads this way. To carry yourself forward and experience myriad things is delusion. That myriad things come forth and experience themselves through you is awakening. Those who have great realization of delusion are Buddhas. Those who are greatly deluded about realization are sentient beings. Further, there are those who continue realizing beyond realization, and those who are in delusion throughout delusion. When Buddhas are truly Buddhas, they do not necessarily notice that they are Buddhas. However, they are actualized Buddhas who go on actualizing Buddhas. So to carry yourself forward and experience myriad things is delusion. That myriad things come forth and experience themselves through you is awakening. So Dogen incorporates a number of images, and here he's using a very physical image of carrying yourself forward, like moving your body forward assertively, and associating that with delusion. And what that brought to mind was a distinction I read once between a tourist and a traveler, where the tourist, in going to a European city, might hire a driver and say, look, today I want to see the 16th century cathedral. I want to see the famous Vermeer painting, and I want to see the statue of the little boy urinating. And then proceed to spend the rest of the day doing that. The tourist. The traveler, on the other hand, might situate him or herself on a bench in the central plaza or in a park or in a cafe and just observe. Observe what people are doing here. Observe how they're going through the day. Observe perhaps the buildings, the different use of color, the architecture, the way people interact with one another. Observe the sights and the smells, the sounds, listening to the birds and how they're different from the birds that one might have at home. Observe the trees, the difference in foliage. And perhaps, if there is a shared language, strike up a chat with one or two people and find out a little bit about who they are, what they're like. The traveler. Letting the myriad things realize themselves through you. Instead of carrying oneself forward to see what you want to see. So another thing that came to me thinking about this little passage is the song from 1966 by the Supremes, You Can't Hurry Love. You know the song. You can't hurry love, you just have to wait. You got to trust in good time, no matter how long it takes. And then there's this throbbing bass line, followed by the chorus coming in. Speaking to how some things you just cannot preconceive and grasp, including the realization that Dogen is talking about and that the Buddha referred to. So the mind being such as it is, I had to look into this song and well, who wrote this? And it was a trio of composers from Motown, associated with Motown, who wrote a number of songs. The Holland brothers and Dozier. But stumbling onto that, I couldn't help but notice that the song had a predecessor, and I apologize to any of you who may be theophobic, fear of theism. But the predecessor for this song was interesting. It was actually composed and performed by a woman named Dorothy Love Coates in 1953. And her song went like this. You can't hurry God, no, you just have to wait. Trust and give him time, no matter how long it takes. He's a God you can't hurry, but you don't have to worry. He may not come when you want him, but he's right on time. And there is actually a YouTube of Dorothy Coates and the original gospel harmonettes performing this song, which you can look up easily if you want to. And I recommend it for any time you might be feeling somewhat down for whatever reason. It's almost guaranteed to bring cheer. So, similar message, I think. That the attitude conducive to realization is one of patience, receptivity, and humility. So Dogen goes on, those who have great realization of delusion are Buddhas. And those who are greatly deluded about realization are sentient beings. Further, those who continue realizing, there are those who continue realizing beyond realization and those who continue in delusion beyond delusion, in so many words. So I think, to me, Dogen is just stressing the point in a different way. Saying that he's advising his lay practitioner, if you have some preconceived notion about realization, about enlightenment, about satori, about awakening, if you have that preconceived notion and you try to get there, then you are become lost in delusion. However, if one becomes more aware, more sensitive, just more cognizant of how deluded we are, how easily we fall into self-centered mode, then that is a way into realization. To me, it's really logical how, why it's so easy to fall into self-centered mode. Because everywhere we go, there we are. So we're always the center of whatever we're experiencing. We're just right there in the middle, and everything is happening around us. And it's very much the same way as Ptolemy, who developed a theory of how everything rotates around the Earth, because we're on the Earth. It looks like everything's just moving around up there around us. But it took investigation and quite a few centuries to understand that there was an easier way to explain things. And further, Dogen says that it's possible to keep realizing beyond realization. In other words, there's no end. As Rosan Yoshida would say at the Zen Center frequently, there is no end to the depth of the Dharma. That reality is unlimited. And also, there's no end to the depth of delusion. That no matter how deluded you are, it's possible to be more deluded. He goes on, when Buddhas are truly Buddhas, they do not necessarily notice that they are Buddhas. However, they are actualized Buddhas who go on actualizing Buddhas. So, one may actualize realization, express the Dharma, become, for whatever transient moments, a Buddha, without realizing it. It probably happens all the time. And in fact, when one realizes it, that sort of snaps you back into delusion. When one is lost in the task, when one is serving the Dharma, when one is fully engaged, wholeheartedly. There's no time to worry about whether you're a Buddha or a sentient being. And furthermore, when Buddhahood is expressed, it's contagious. It affects others. It actualizes Buddhas. And I think you can see this sometimes in gatherings or meetings where one person might express compassion about an issue and others respond. So I guess to sort of wrap this up a bit, it seems to me like there is a fundamental process. Because the initial motivation to gain realization is almost always self-centered in some manner. You want to be a certain way. You want to have a certain thing. I know a little more than 30 years ago when I started a daily meditation practice, my motivation was to become more calm and collected in crisis situations. I was going through my fellowship in high-risk obstetrics, and I found that sometimes, for instance, in the operating room, when things were not going well, I would develop a tremor. And I thought, well, I need to do something about that because that's counterproductive. So I wanted to make myself different in a way. And I thought, well, I tried a number of things, but meditation was one of them. And then I also cut down on my caffeine intake and learned how to brace my arm and hand against things so that the tremor does not transmit to the instrument that you're holding. But that was all well and good, and I have no idea if meditation helped with that, but it sort of developed a life of its own beyond that point. And beyond that point, I would really kind of have a hard time explaining why I meditate. And maybe that's part of the process, that one almost always gets into this because of trying to solve a problem, trying to be different in some way, trying to fix something with some relatively self-centered motivation. But then there has to be a process where that kind of melts away. And as Dogen will say later in this work, the body and mind drop away, fall away. And you're just left with this. So I think I'll stop there, and I'd be interested in thoughts about, if anything resonated in these passages with you, or brought to mind any experiences, or what came up. And I think we'll break up into two groups to start with, and then get back together after a few minutes. So let me just execute that.